Being flooded is an incredibly traumatic experience. Polluted water devastates the ground floor of your home, and insurance claims can run into tens of thousands of pounds. It's not unusual to be out of your home for around 9 months whilst repairs and reinstatement works are carried out. Alongside this, it's now widely acknowledged that being flooded can negatively impact on people's mental health, and ultimately it poses a risk to life. The 2007 UK floods saw 13 people sadly lose their lives, and in 2021 in the European floods, 242 people lost their lives. And yet, despite this, 67% of people in the UK don't know the flood risk to their homes. There are various different types of flooding, including surface water, river and coastal, reservoir, groundwater and sewer flooding. Flood maps are available for river and coastal, surface water and reservoir flooding. Surface water flooding affects more people than all other types of flooding combined, with in excess of 3 million properties estimated to be at risk. If you don't live near a river or the sea, it's not unreasonable to think that you are not at risk of flooding. However, this may not be correct. Surface water flood maps have only become readily available within around the last 10 years, and therefore if you have not moved home within this time, you may not be aware that you could be in a flood risk area. A 2009 Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, or RICS paper, stated that flooding can negatively impact on a property's value, with impacts ranging from negligible to severe, which is around 30%. However, values do usually recover 3 years post-flood. There are clearly a wide range of factors involved, such as the severity and depth of flooding, the risk, the ability to defend the property, and of course the location. The benefits of living on a floodplain have often been seen to counterbalance or outweigh the drawbacks of a potential flood. However, as flood risk increases with climate change, the balance may be altered. The Environment Agency currently reports flood risk based on the chances of an area flooding in any 1 year. It rates areas with return periods such as a 1 in 100 year to a 1 in 30 year chance of flooding as being at medium risk. But Zurich have warned that when viewed over a typical 30-year mortgage, this actually equates to between a 26 and 63% chance of being flooded in that period, which is a far greater risk than current terminology suggests. Market forces can also artificially alter the value of flood risk properties. Amid the rush to complete sales, flood risk may not be considered, and as surveys aren't required to show the risks, the onus falls on buyers to find out whether a home lies in an area at risk of flooding. Due diligence is vital. The ability to obtain home insurance can drastically impact the value of a property. An uninsurable property may be unmortgageable and thus worth considerably less than it otherwise may have been. Most homes in flood risk areas are currently insurable thanks to the government-backed reinsurance scheme FloodRe. However, it's important to note this scheme is due to end in 2039, which is within the period of most mortgage terms. When FloodRe ends, the insurance market is expected to revert to risk-reflective pricing. High flood risk could certainly mean high premiums, if insurable at all, which could negatively impact on property values. Commercial properties are not covered by FloodRe, and thus high-risk commercial properties can prove difficult or impossible to insure for flood risk. With FloodRe due to end in just 17 years, it's paramount that action is taken now to implement property flood resilience measures and ensure the UK's housing stock is more resilient to flooding. PFR consists of 2 main areas: resistance and resilience. There are various different measures which can reduce the flood risk to your home or workplace, with different levels of protection offered. The main difference between resistance and resilience is that resistance aims to prevent water entering a building with equipment such as flood barriers, whereas resilience aims to reduce the damage that is done when water has to enter a building, and it speeds up the recovery process. Flood resistance tends to be the preferred method by most. However, it may not be suitable in all situations, as it's dependent on the construction style and the risk to the property. In deeper floods, to avoid structural damage, resilience should be adopted. It is of vital importance to understand the flood risk of a property before purchasing it. If a flood risk is highlighted, you should instruct a qualified flood risk consultant to conduct further due diligence. For the majority of us, our homes will be the most expensive purchase we will ever make, and so due diligence on flood risk is vital. Ensure you understand whether flood risk may worsen in future due to climate change. Should you wish to redevelop a property, remember that you will have to prove to the local regulatory body, often the planning authority, that the development shall not place any risk to its occupiers and that flooding is not worsened elsewhere. Carrying out these checks early on will ultimately aid in safeguarding your investment.